All right, guys, we're back with another one. Controversial ENT here. Let's get to today's topic, guys. Let's get to the subject at hand. Chris Eubank Jr. Let me give you some updates on Chris Eubank Jr., guys. So, he's gone and signed a contract. He's got a new contract that he signed with Kelle Sauerland, guys. Kelle Sauerland, the German promoter, who also resides in the UK. I think he bounces back and forth from the United Kingdom and other parts of Europe consistently, right? But Kelle Sauerland has Chris Eubank Jr. now as part of his roster, guys. So that is a good signing for Chris Eubank Jr. Kelle Sauerland is the guy who hosted the what is it? The World Boxing Super Series, right? So he's really known for that. That's one of his major accomplishments. So now he's signed Chris Eubank Jr. He likes Chris Eubank Jr. And like me, he finds Eubank an entertaining fighter. Yeah, entertaining fighter. Now, guys, a couple of stuff that we already know. Eubank is currently training with Roy Jones Jr. Now, bear in mind, guys, Eubank has been training with Roy Jones now for over a year. I believe it's just over a year, right? So, one of the major reasons why Eubank chose Roy Jones was so that he could add stuff to his arsenal, all right? So, Eubank is already very good at the things that he does in terms of his offense is good, right? Especially his uppercuts. No one in the sport of boxing throws a better uppercut than Chris Eubank Jr. Facts. This is not a disputable debate, right? It's not a disputable thing. No one in the sport of boxing throws a better uppercut than Chris Eubank Jr. This guy doesn't just throw it beautifully, but he will throw 4, 5, 6 with the same velocity, with the same power. Now, this Eubank Jr. is not. He lacks slightly in the power department. If he was more powerful, right? If he had more power in his punches, he would probably get guys out of there just on the volume of work. But yeah, he does rely on the volume to get you out of there. A little bit like an Errol Spence who relies on volume to get you out. Now, those are Eubank Jr.'s strengths. Now, he's been training with Roy Jones. Me personally, and a lot of people in boxing, especially on this side of the water, in the United Kingdom, we want to see the improvements he's made with Roy Jones Jr. Now, I will say this, in my personal opinion, that last fight that he had that came to an end because I think Korobov injured himself, for me, it was for the best that happened to Chris Eubank because I think he took that fight a little prematurely. If you need to give yourself a full 12 months to really, I don't know if it's 12 months per se, but you need to give yourself enough time to adopt new things in your fighting style. And I thought when he took on that Korobov fight, it came, in my opinion, just a little too soon. But now he's got a fight, and he's got a fight coming up, which options that I want to talk about next, guys. But before we do anything else, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe, guys, but especially hit the subscription button, guys, and help the channel to grow. So, Chris Eubank Jr., who has he got lined up? Who has Sauerland got lined up for Chris Eubank Jr.? That's the main question we all want to know now, right? So, Chris Eubank Jr., let me pull up his box rec real quick just to get a bit of an idea of this guy's accomplishments, right? Just to get a little idea of this guy's accomplishments. Now, I will say this, guys. Chris Eubank Jr. has been campaigning in 2 weight classes, right? He's been campaigning at 160 and 168. And at 168, he's slightly disadvantaged because he's usually the smaller guy in there against his opposition. Although he has beaten 168-pounders, it is not the ideal weight class for him because he is a 160-pounder fighter, all right? Let's just get that. I had to put that there straight first and foremost, right? So he stands at a record of 29-2, right? So he's had 2 defeats, 29 victories, and 22 KOs, guys. 22 KOs, all right? So he hasn't got a bad record. The problem is he's got average opposition in his, in his CV. Make 1 or 2 good ones. He needs bigger names and he needs more names on his CV. He's been very inactive, and that's the downside about Chris Eubank Jr. So who has Kelle Sauerland got in line for him to fight. Now, there are a couple of names, I think I've seen about 3 or 4. Now, in my personal opinion, one of those names that he's got as an option, and I know Eubank Jr. wants that fight, but in my personal opinion, because understand, I'm an observer of boxing, I analyze the sport, I analyze fighters, you name it, right? Styles make fights. And one of those guys that he's after, which I'm going to specify, is a big no-no in my personal opinion, right? So let's look at the first guy that he wants, who's a Ryota Murata, the Japanese fighter, 16-2, right? 13 KOs, right? So he hasn't got an extensive amount of fights, 16-2, 2 losses, 16 fights. His last 2 fights were entertaining fights, especially the one that he had with, what's the guy's name that he fought? Let me give you the guy's precise name. Bear with me here. Ryota Murata. That's it. Now, I recently went back and watched his last 2 fights. You can watch his last 3 as well if you want. Not just the one with Stephen Butler. That was like, he knocked him out. He's entertaining for the Japanese crowd. That's their fighter, basically. The Japanese guy's their fighter. He's a 6 foot tall guy. He's got the right size. He's, heavy-handed guy, tall guy, and he's a come forward. He's a come forward fighter. He only knows how to fight coming forward. He lets his hands go, so he hasn't got the problem of not letting his hands go. But he is 34 years of age, guys. 34 in boxing is not young in boxing. Right? Now, in my opinion, his best fights was definitely against Rob Brandt, right? Especially the rematch. Very entertaining fight, guys. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go watch that fight. You want to see a slugfest and guys throwing about 150 punches in round 1, and then in round 2, similar things with a knockout. You go watch his rematch against Rob Brandt. It was an entertaining fight. That fight is scored as a 5-star fight on BoxRec, guys. So I'm not disrespecting no one. I give, what's his name? I give Ryota his props because he deserves his due props for that fight. That fight was very entertaining. And he made some money as well in that fight. So you go ahead and watch it. Hassan Andami's fought him. Go watch that as well. He's got lost to him, and he lost and he won against him in the rematch. So he seems to right his wrongs, right? So maybe he can give Dylan White a bit of tips on how to right your wrongs and how to win your rematches, because this guy wins all these rematches, guys. But I will say this. In my opinion, Chris Eubank Jr. fighting him is an excellent fight for Chris Eubank Jr., right? And to be fair, it's an excellent fight for Ryota Murata, right? Because both of those styles of those fighters gel very well together, right? They gel very well together. But in my honest opinion, and this is just my opinion, guys, I believe Ryota is completely tailor-made for Chris Eubank Jr. And I mean tailor-made. Now, why do I say that? Because Ryota, in my opinion, he's got one major weakness, right? Because he's a come-forward fighter, he doesn't use angles, okay? He's not a runner. He's not going to run. He's not going to move around. He's going to come at you direct. But because he is that style of fighter, if you watch his fights, he is susceptible to the uppercut from morning till dawn, right? Eubank will be able to land that uppercut on him at will. Murata's defense is a high guard. That's how he likes to defend. The high guard doesn't always defend very well against the uppercut, right? So I just think because of his style, I think Eubank Jr. will actually get him out of there. This is just my opinion, guys. I think Eubank will get him out of there because of the style. It's the style, guys. The style is just wrong. It gels well in terms of making a great fight to watch for us, the viewers. But for Ryota, I can see him really taking major punishment in this fight. And I mean major punishment. Now, if you're the sort of person who's going to be taking punishment, you don't want that person giving it to you to be Chris Eubank Jr. Because this guy has killed a fighter before. And that says a lot. Now, I'm not laughing at the fact that he's killed a fighter, but it's one of those you're stepping in there with someone that's dangerous. Chris Eubank Jr. is dangerous to any fighter who fights him head on. But he is very limited if you are a boxer and a mover. So if Ryota can adopt some sort of moving strategy, he will win the fight. But Ryota's never boxed like that. He's always been the same kind of guy, come forward fighter. So, it makes for an interesting fight. But I can only see this fight going one way and one way only. I see Ryota getting knocked out, probably by the 5th or 6th round. I don't see this fight going further than that. The other options that Chris Eubank Jr. had listed out, Ryota was the first option he wanted, which I believe is the easiest fight to make, and the one they most probably will give him. If I was Chris Eubank Jr., I would take that fight in Japan. Probably because it's probably more money to make over there than taking it anywhere else. I don't think that, there's no point taking that fight in the United Kingdom. I don't think that fight will even happen in this country. The other 2 people he's got on his list, guys, are Gennady Golovkin and Jermall Charlo. Now, when it comes to the Golovkin fight, I also think that's a fantastic fight for Chris Eubank Jr. too, because of the style of Golovkin. Golovkin will come forward, and Chris Eubank Jr. needs you to come forward for him to do damage. It is a fight where Golovkin will take punishment, but it is also a fight where Chris Eubank Jr. will take punishment. The difference is Golovkin hits harder than Chris Eubank Jr. does, right? So Golovkin stands every chance of knocking out Chris Eubank Jr. in that fight. But, in my opinion, Golovkin is ultra susceptible to the uppercut too. Kell Brooks showed you that when he fought Golovkin. The shot that was having fantastic results was the uppercut, in my opinion, as well as maybe certain straight shots that he was throwing. Chris Eubank Jr. is the master of throwing uppercuts, all right? And Golovkin, we'll see how he'll handle it. Bear in mind, he's fighting Golovkin, an older Golovkin. This is not Golovkin at his prime. So this is Golovkin at the age of what? Golovkin's definitely in his early 30s now. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. I take that right back. Golovkin's about 38, I believe. In fact, he is. Let me check. Golovkin, yeah, he's 38 years old. So he is fighting, according to boxing terms, an old man in Golovkin. So Chris Eubank Jr.'s youth, his stamina, all of that should come into play in a fight like that, because he is the younger fighter. How old is Chris Eubank Jr.? Let's find out. I should really know this stuff, but Chris Eubank Jr. is 31 years old. So he's in his 30s. He can't be wasting time, but he's a younger fighter. He's been in some wars already, I promise you that. But I believe that the styles combined together will make for an exceptional fight. I think it will be a Fight of the Year candidate, and probably will be Fight of the Year if these two fight, right? Because it will be absolutely explosive. Chris Eubank Jr. will swarm all over Golovkin. Golovkin's strength and power might get him through that fight, or he might be overwhelmed. We will see. I won't be making predictions for that fight, but I think that's a good fight for Chris Eubank Jr. to take now. The fight, guys. The fight that Chris Eubank Jr. needs to avoid at all costs. And if you are managing him, Kelle, if you're listening, do not put him in there with Jermall Charlo. Do not put him in there with Jermall Charlo, guys. If Chris Eubank Jr. that we've seen previously in all his previous fights up to this point goes in there with Jermall Charlo, Chris Eubank Jr. will lose terribly. He will have no chance, and I repeat, no chance of beating Jermall Charlo. No chance. Jermall Charlo is probably the best fight, potentially, or arguably, should I say, one of the best fighters in that division, if not the best fighter in that division, if not the toughest fighter in that division. But he's definitely dominant. Chris Eubank Jr. that we've seen previously will not beat Jermall Charlo. Now, if the Roy Jones tutelage pays off on Chris Eubank Jr., and this guy's learned how to move, this guy's learned how to box, if he's added that to his arsenal and he's actually become a better fighter, then it's a different fight altogether. But you don't want to test what you've learned with someone like Jermall Charlo. No, that's not a smart idea. If you want that fight, Chris, you should chase that fight after the one you're about to have. So have that as a second fight. take on Ryota, showcase what you've learned, try to win that fight, and then consider fighting someone like a Jamal Charlo. In my opinion, I tell you, go for Golovkin first. If you can't get him, go for Ryota. Fight the two of them, see how you do, and then worry about Jamal Charlo. But that's what it is, guys. Chris Eubank Jr. is the interim WBA middleweight title holder. I do believe he's WBA. I do believe he's the WBA. And he is. He is. The WBA interim middleweight champion. That's Chris Eubank Jr., guys. So let's see what happens. I know he's ecstatic. He's excited about this signing of this contract, and he should be excited about it. He's been inactive for too long. Entertaining fighter, and me, I like to see entertaining fighters in the ring. Ryota against Eubank will make an entertaining fight. Golovkin against Eubank will be an even better fight. Jamal Charlo against Eubank, I don't advise it. Let me know what you think, guys. Traversal ENT. Weighing down on Eubank's options, guys. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Show your support. I'll be back with another one.